He slapped her in the middle of the party, in front of his mistress, thinking she'd bow her head as always. But that night, amid the laughter and camera flashes, Chicago's richest man had no idea the woman he just humiliated was the new CEO of the corporation he was indebted to. That slap didn't just shatter a marriage, it sparked the collapse of an empire built on lies. Because tonight, the silent wife no longer stood in anyone's shadow. She would rise and let the entire city know who truly held the power. Would he realize before she turned everything upside down? Or would that slap become the death knell for his own downfall? Wind swept along Michigan Avenue, brushing past towering glass buildings, carrying the scent of expensive orchids from the Langham Hotel's lobby out to the sidewalk. Inside, Chicago pulsed with a glamorous night where money and power blended into a dazzling, blinding light. And at the heart of it all stood Alara Whitfield, 4 months pregnant, draped in a pearl-colored satin gown, gazing at her reflection in a long mirror, her deep brown eyes shimmering like a lake stirred by the wind. She gently touched her belly, her breath slow and steady, trying to calm her racing heart. Outside, music echoed from the main ballroom, a smooth jazz tune that felt distant, cold. Tonight, Blackwell Ventures, the company where her husband, Dominic Blackwell, was a major shareholder, was hosting its 25th anniversary gala. Press, investors, and politicians were all in attendance. For Dominic, it was a stage for power. For Alara, it was a mandatory performance. Dominic always said, "We represent perfection, Alara. You understand that, don't you?" She understood, more than anyone. For 5 years, their marriage had been a contract written in glances and silence. He was the star. She was the quiet frame reflecting his brilliance. Every word, every step she took was calculated to serve the brand of Millionaire's wife. But there was a truth Dominic didn't know. Alara was no longer standing behind him. Months earlier, after Blackwell Ventures' largest investor collapsed in a financial scandal, the parent company in New York secretly appointed Alara, a former international investment fund manager, as interim CEO to oversee all operations. Dominic had no clue. He still thought she was just his woman. Ironic. Really, the man who saw her as an ornament was now under the authority of the woman who could sign his financial suspension at any moment. Alara hadn't planned to reveal it yet. She was waiting. She wanted to see how he'd reveal his true nature when he thought no one was watching. And then, the signs appeared: suspicious texts, the unfamiliar scent of perfume, late nights when Dominic returned with eyes gleaming like a man who'd won a dangerous game. She didn't confront him. She observed, silent as the night enveloping the city. Only the baby inside her knew. Each time her heart tightened, it kicked gently, as if saying, "Mom, I'm here." The door opened. Dominic strode in, his black tuxedo hugging his frame, the sharp scent of cologne hitting her senses. "We can't be late," he said, his voice low, icy. Alara nodded slightly, lips pressed together. His gaze swept over her, lingering briefly on her belly, then moving away cold, as if it didn't hold his own future. On the way to the main hall, Dominic talked about the guest list, the Japanese investor, how tonight he had to look perfect. She listened, but her mind drifted. Across the street, through the glass, neon lights reflected her face, no longer the weak woman. Beneath the polished makeup, a fire smoldered, one she was only beginning to recognize. As they entered the grand hall, crystal chandeliers sparkled, their light bouncing off glass walls. The clink of glasses mingled with the scent of wine, perfume, and ambition. Alara greeted a few acquaintances, her smile polite, her words carefully measured. But as her eyes scanned the room, her heart tightened. Serena Vale, Dominic's new assistant, stood by the champagne bar, her red dress blazing like fire. Each time Dominic spoke, she laughed, tilting her head, her eyes sparkling. A light touch on his arm, a quick glance too subtle to be noticed, except by Alara. She sipped her drink, the bitterness seeping into her tongue, and realized it felt familiar. Not from jealousy, but from confirmation what she'd suspected was now real. "You okay?" Dominic asked, his tone not quite caring. Alara smiled. "Perfect." The words slipped from her lips like a velvet-wrapped blade. Dominic didn't notice. He turned away, pulling Serena along, leaving behind a mix of perfume and the gala's opulent artificial air. As the music swelled, Alara stepped back toward the window, where city lights glimmered like a golden ocean. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering, "It's time, my love. Mom's done staying silent." She didn't know that in a few hours, this very place would witness a resounding slap that would shake Chicago, a slap that would topple a financial empire and mark the moment a man who thought himself invincible realized he'd struck the wrong woman. The saxophone's notes curled like thin smoke through the air, weaving past evening gowns, sparkling champagne flutes, and raucous laughter. The Blackwell Ventures Gala was where Chicago's elite came not to celebrate, but to be seen. Everyone wore a mask not of silk or lace, but of smiles. Elara moved through the crowd, her steps slow but deliberate. She was a cool breeze cutting through a whirlwind of ambition. Each handshake, each glance she gave was just enough to be remembered, but no one knew who she truly was. Not even Dominic, the man who'd once held her hand at the altar, knew the woman standing before him tonight was entirely different. Beneath the soft satin gown was an executive, the one who understood every financial thread of the corporation they were toasting. From the stage, Dominic appeared, golden light sweeping across his perfectly tailored tuxedo. He flashed a radiant smile, bowing to investors, his hand resting on Serena's back to guide her. The gesture was so light, only those watching closely would notice its possessive undertone. Elara noticed immediately. She stood a few steps away, the chandelier's light turning her eyes into cold amber. Each time Dominic leaned to whisper to Serena, his lips curled into a private smile, the kind that once belonged to Elara. "We're all playing roles," she thought. He the perfect husband in public, she the perfect wife in silence. But only one of them knew this act was about to end. Glasses clinked as Dominic took the stage, his voice booming through the microphone. "Thank you all for joining us to celebrate 25 years of Blackwell Ventures, a journey of trust, family, and vision." Each mention of trust made Elara want to laugh. She'd seen the reports he hid the mismatched numbers, the shady transfers. She knew he was playing with fire, and she knew who held the match. Beside her, Serena quietly raised her glass, her eyes gleaming with pride as Dominic mentioned her name in his speech. Elara listened, her chest tightening not from jealousy, but from contempt. Dominic wasn't just betraying their marriage. He was betraying the shareholders who'd entrusted billions to his hands. After the speech, Dominic stepped off the stage, a crowd swarming him. Elara stood still, her hand resting lightly on her belly. The baby kicked gently, a fragile yet resolute movement. She whispered, "You hear that, don't you? It's starting." An older man approached James Corbett, a board member. "Miss Whitfield, great to see you here. I heard you're working with the Altura Fund in New York." The question caught Elara off guard. Then she smiled. "Just some minor financial consulting, Mr. Corbett. Dominic likes me close to ensure everything runs smoothly." The man chuckled, missing the irony. Elara caught Dominic's gaze from across the room. He was watching her, displeased. He hated when she drew attention. He wanted her to smile and nod. But tonight, the lights illuminated her face, making her more radiant than ever, something that unsettled Dominic. He strode over, a polite smile plastered on his face. "Excuse me, James, I'll take my wife for a moment." He grabbed Elara's hand, squeezing hard. "What are you doing?" he hissed, maintaining his polished facade. "Elara's just talking," she replied softly, her voice so calm he had to lean in to hear. "Don't turn tonight into a drama, Dominic. I'm tired." He smirked. "Tired or jealous?" "Both," she said, her eyes locking onto his, unflinching. "But don't forget who's really in charge here." Dominic froze, not understanding her implication. He raised an eyebrow, sneering. "Don't say foolish things in front of others. You don't want to ruin your image." Elara didn't respond. She only looked past his shoulder where Serena stood smiling, her eyes triumphant. A different smile curved Elara's lips, one that made Dominic uneasy. The night wore on with music and wine. Dominic disappeared with Serena several times, and each time he returned, Elara's eyes grew colder. She still greeted guests, still smiled, but inside, she was counting down to the moment he'd fully expose himself. Near midnight, as the crowd thinned, Elara saw them, Dominic and Serena, slipping out to the garden behind the hall. She set her glass down, her heart pounding. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was done hiding behind walls of silence. Each step she took, Her heels clicked rhythmically, like a clock ticking towards something about to break. She walked through the corridor, dim lights casting long shadows, the jazz fading into the air. The glass door opened, and the night's chill hit her. Outside, the garden glowed with golden lights. In a far corner, two figures intertwined, Dominic and Serena smiling, breathing close, his hand resting familiarly on her back, shamelessly intimate. Elara froze. The world seemed to hush, leaving only the sound of wind and her heartbeat. She didn't cry. She only took a deep breath, her hand on her belly, whispering to herself, "All right, the roll's over." The night wind rustled through rose bushes, lifting Elara's hair. Music from the ballroom drifted faintly, like an echo from a world she no longer belonged to. In the garden's golden glow, Dominic leaned down, his lips nearly brushing Serena's neck. The image burned, humiliating, raw, as if the sky itself collapsed in that moment. Elara stood still, not shocked, but watching the end of a play she'd already predicted. She felt the baby kick a small nudge, enough to pull her from paralysis. Her heels turned on the paved path, the crisp sound echoing with the wind's breath. Each step toward them carried her further from the man she once loved. Dominic. His name slipped out like a sharp, cold blade. He spun around, his steel-gray eyes flicked over her, briefly flustered, then hardening into anger. "Elara, what are you doing here?" His tone implied she was the intruder. She looked straight at him, steady, no tears falling. "You're asking the wrong question," she said, her voice low, even. "I should be asking, what are you doing here, with her?" Serena stepped back, her face pale. Dominic gave a dismissive laugh, regaining control. "Don't start a scene in front of others. You know we need to save face." "Save face?" Elara's lips curled. "Interesting, because you didn't seem to care about that when you put your hands on another woman at your own company's gala." A wave of silence spread between the three. Serena's eyes darted, uneasy, but Dominic stood firm, his face cold, the look of a man used to giving orders. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said, his voice dropping, hissing through clenched teeth. "Go back inside. Don't make me." Slap. The sound cracked like thunder in a clear sky. But it wasn't from her, from him. Dominic's hand struck fast, hard, the garden's lights reflecting a silver streak. The sound shattered the quiet. Elara's cheek burned, her body swayed, but she didn't fall. Not this time. Her breath hitched, but her eyes never left his. Gasps from nearby onlookers, curious guests who'd witnessed the scene, began to ripple. A few phones flashed. Dominic didn't seem to notice. In his rage, he growled, "You never know your limits. You never know your place." Your place. The words stabbed her heart, not because they hurt, but because they unleashed everything she'd suppressed. Elara slowly raised a hand, touching the red mark on her cheek. She felt the heat, felt the steady beat of her baby's heart, calmer, stronger than her own. No one moved, only the sound of snapping cameras, the wind, and Dominic's heavy breathing. Elara lifted her head. The garden's lights cast a soft halo around her face. In her deep brown eyes, there was no pain, only something sharper than anger awakening. She spoke, her voice soft but clear. "You just hit the wrong person, Dominic." He frowned, confused. "What?" "Elara Whitfield, the obedient wife you thought you knew, no longer exists. Now, I'm the interim CEO of Blackwell Holdings, the parent company of the business you run." The garden held its breath. Serena's jaw dropped. Dominic stood frozen, as if he'd heard words from another world. "You're saying what?" he stammered. Elara stepped forward. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of steel striking stone. "You didn't just slap your wife in front of your mistress. You struck the person who can destroy your entire career with a single signature." Dominic's face paled. "You're threatening me?" "No," Elara said, her eyes blazing in the light. "I'm just telling the truth." Murmurs spread through the garden. Some had started live streaming, cameras aimed at them. Flashes sparked like a storm of justice brewing. Dominic looked around, seeing dozens of eyes watching. He tried to tighten his lips, but panic flickered in his gaze. He stepped back, his hands trembling, unsure if from rage or fear. "Elara, can we talk privately?" She shook her head. "There's nothing private anymore, Dominic. You made it public, so it ends publicly." Elara turned, her steps long and steady across the stone path, leaving him alone under scornful gazes and recording lenses. Her pearl gown brushed the grass, each step a hammer striking the collapse of an empire. She didn't cry. She didn't look back. Only the night wind blew, carrying the chill and the scent of jasmine, the scent of freedom. Behind her, Serena let out a sharp breath. Dominic stood rooted, hands limp, eyes hollow. In that moment, the man who thought he had everything became the one judged under the spotlight, while the woman he'd underestimated walked away as the silent victor. The next morning, Chicago woke to an earthquake. Newspapers, blogs, TV stations, all flooded with the same image. Dominic Blackwell, his face twisted in anger, his hand frozen mid-air, and Elara, the pregnant woman, standing tall, her eyes calm as a winter breeze. The world seemed to gasp as one watching that 24-second video. 24 seconds were enough to destroy a reputation and redeem a soul. Elara didn't turn on the TV. She didn't need to. Everyone was talking about her. Her temporary apartment on a high floor in River North was quiet, filled only with the hum of the coffee maker and the patter of rain on the windows. She sat in a gray wool robe, hands cradling her belly, the morning light casting a faint glow on the fading red mark on her cheek. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls from the press, investors, old friends who hadn't reached out in years. Some called her brave. Others said she'd humiliated her husband. But Elara knew the world didn't care who was right or wrong. They just craved a spectacle. On her laptop screen, the video had surpassed 10 million views. Comments below split into factions. Some defended Dominic. Others championed Elara, with insults and trembling words of empathy. A pinned comment stood out. She wasn't just slapped, she was awakened. Elara read it, then smiled her first smile in months. Yes, she'd awakened. From the dream of submission, from the image of the dutiful wife society had crafted for her. The doorbell rang. Isabel Carter, her best friend and legal advisor, walked in, her face a mix of worry and admiration. "My God, Elara, you're the talk of the nation," she said, setting a stack of magazines on the table. The cover featured Elara, with bold text below, "The woman who stopped staying silent." Elara raised an eyebrow. "Looks like they love their labels." Isabel sat across from her, eyes serious. "Do you understand what this means? Dominic will try to spin the media against you. He'll say you fabricated it, or used your CEO position to threaten him." Elara was quiet for a moment. Then she set her coffee down, her voice calm. "He can say whatever he wants, but numbers don't lie. The hidden transfers, the shady contracts, they're all in my hands, Isabel." Isabel looked at her friend, her gaze a mix of concern and awe. "You're going to release everything?" Elara shook her head. "Not yet. When the world only sees a woman who was slapped, they're not ready to hear her speak. But when they start trusting her, that's when she opens her mouth." Silence filled the room. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Elara stood, looking out at the city. Below, glass buildings reflected the rain, each drop falling like a countdown. She saw hundreds of posts with the hashtag number "Stand with Elara" flooding social media. Women everywhere, lawyers, doctors, shop clerks, students shared videos about moments they'd been dismissed, humiliated, or silenced. Her story had become a spark. Isabel opened her laptop, showing an email from Blackwell Holdings board. "They want to meet you. They say you need to clarify your current position." Elara turned, her eyes sharp as steel. "My position? I'll clarify it. Not to them, to the world." Isabel looked at her, then nodded. She understood the woman before her was no longer the Elara trapped in crystal walls. She was Elara of the public, who'd learned to turn wounds into weapons. That evening, Elara opened the window, letting the rain touch her hands. The city still glowed, sleepless, but inside her, something was shifting. Not anger, not hatred, but purpose. She picked up her phone, typing a note. No more silence. Not just for me, but for every woman who stood behind the spotlight. A lightning bolt flashed, illuminating her face in the window's reflection. Those eyes held no fear, only the radiant light of someone who knew where she was going. Below, in Dominic's office, financial contracts were being frantically reviewed. Internal rumors spread. Investors panicked. A few economic reporters caught the scent of blood. Ilara knew a storm was coming, and this time, she'd be the one steering it, not dodging it. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling her baby's heartbeat. "We're okay, my love," she whispered. "Mom's clearing the path so when you grow up, you'll never fear a slap." Outside, Chicago drowned in rain, but in the small apartment, a resolute flame burned. Not a flame of anger, but of rebirth. That morning, Chicago's sky was unusually clear. No rain, no thunder, just a cold, steel-like light streaming through the massive windows of the Morning Pulse studio, a show with millions of weekly viewers. In the makeup room, Ilara sat still before the mirror. The lights framed her reflection, delicate, calm, with soft coral lipstick. No one saw the storm brewing in her deep brown eyes. The host, Nora Stein, walked in. A sharp middle-aged woman, known for questions that made politicians sweat. "Ready, Ilara?" she asked, her voice light but her eyes like knives. Ilara smiled, unshaken, more ready than ever. As the studio lights blazed, the audience fell silent. Nora opened, her voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, this morning, we're joined by Ilara Whitfield, the woman who's got the entire country talking." The camera panned slowly. Ilara sat upright, hands clasped, breathing even. Nora began. "Miss Ilara, in just one night, the video of you and your husband, Mr. Dominic Blackwell, has been shared tens of millions of times. The question viewers want answered is, how did it feel to be humiliated in front of hundreds, and now to be the nation's focal point?" Ilara lifted her head, her gaze unwavering. "Honestly, I don't feel humiliated," she said, her voice low, deliberate. "I feel free. When a man thinks he can slap his wife and still be celebrated, it's not just violence, it's a disease of power, and I'm done living in that disease." The words landed, heavy as a bell. The studio held its breath. Nora nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Are you referring to Mr. Dominic?" Ilara smiled. "I'm talking about anyone who believes silence equals weakness." Nora, deftly shifting gears. "There are rumors you hold a significant role in Blackwell Holdings specifically. Interim CEO. Can you confirm that?" Time seemed to freeze. Ilara knew her answer would shape not only her fate but Dominic's retreat. She nodded. "Yes, I was appointed 4 months ago by the New York board." Murmurs erupted in the audience. Nora kept her composure, but her eyes betrayed surprise. "So, you're saying Mr. Dominic, who runs the subsidiary Blackwell Ventures, is actually working under you?" Ilara lifted her head, her voice soft as a breeze but cold as steel. "Yes, and he didn't know until that night." A long silence followed. The camera zoomed in on her face, calm eyes, lips slightly curved. In that moment, America saw not a victim, but a symbol of female power. The show ended. The lights dimmed. Ilara left the studio, reporters' shouts trailing like waves. She walked straight to the car, where Isabel waited. "You just sparked a second storm," Isabel said, her voice half worried, half thrilled. Blackwell Ventures stock dropped 12% in under 30 minutes. Ilara looked through the car window, seeing people gathered outside the company headquarters, holding number stand with Ilara signs. "This storm needed to happen," she said softly. "So those in glass offices know silence doesn't mean blindness." That afternoon, her phone rang. A deep voice came through Malcolm Ward, chairman of Blackwell Holdings board, the powerful man who'd once mentored Dominic. "Ilara," he said, polite but tense. "We need to talk. Privately." 2 hours later, she stepped into the boardroom on the 42nd floor. Malcolm waited, his blue eyes icy. "You've made things far more complicated," he began. "Shareholders are panicking. Dominic's demanding an emergency meeting. Are you trying to drag us all down with you?" Ilara set her bag down, opened her laptop. "No, I'm trying to pull us up by removing what's dragging this system to the bottom." She turned the screen toward Malcolm rows of reports, secret offshore transfers, signatures from Dominic, and other high-ranking figures. Malcolm stared, his face paling. "Where did you get these?" "It doesn't matter," Ilara said. "What matters is I know he didn't act alone." Silence fell. Ilara continued. "You have 2 choices. 1, I send all this to the SEC tomorrow morning. 2, you help me clean this up before it all goes up in flames." Malcolm studied her for a long moment, then sighed. You're bold, Ilara. Do you know who you're playing with? She gave a faint smile. I've slept next to a monster. You think I'm scared of anything anymore? In that moment, in the mirrored room under dim light, Malcolm nodded a nod from a man who'd once dismissed her, but now respected her. He extended his hand. Where do we start? Ilara shook it firmly. From the shadows, she said, because only by walking through them can we see who's truly in the light. Cold wind blew through the 42nd floor window, where Ilara stood looking down at Michigan Avenue. Below, people moved like flecks of light in a steel maze. She'd always loved Chicago, a city that never slept, nor forgave. 3 days after the interview, the media storm hadn't subsided. Dominic stayed silent, absent, but Ilara knew his silence wasn't surrender. He was preparing a counterattack. On her desk, documents were neatly stacked. The words, Offshore Transfer, Project Atlas, stood out in bold on each page. These were the proofs she and Malcolm had uncovered after hours of data review. Millions of dollars siphoned from Blackwell Ventures accounts, funneled to a shady fund in the Cayman Islands, disguised as an international art project. Ilara sat, flipping pages, her eyes scanning signatures. Dominic's signature, Serena Vale's his mistress and assistant, and another that chilled her. Vivienne Crosswell, honorary chair of Blackwell Holdings Board, Dominic's financial patron. The world's small, isn't it? She said softly, a hint of irony in her voice. The door swung open. Isabel entered, carrying a new stack of files. Ilara, news. Dominic's hired Whitehall and Price. They specialize in crisis management. And, word is, he's planning a press conference to fight back. Ilara didn't look up. I'm guessing he'll say I staged everything. Exactly. And worse, they're planning to leak fake evidence that you embezzled funds before joining Blackwell. Ilara gave a faint smile, unsurprised. He'll choke himself with his own lies. Malcolm entered moments later, his face grave. I just got an anonymous letter. He placed an envelope on the table. Inside was a screenshot. Ilara speaking with him in the office, the angle perfect, as if someone had been watching. Attached was a scrawled note. Stop, or everything blows up. Isabel gasped. Who sent this? Ilara picked up the paper, her eyes cold. Someone used to living in the dark, but I'm not stopping. She turned to the screen. A financial map appeared, a maze of arrows linking shell companies from Chicago to Zurich to Hong Kong. Ilara pointed to a small dot. Here, Blue Arc Foundation. Look familiar? Serena was their PR consultant before joining Dominic. All the money flows through this. Malcolm frowned. If we prove that connection, Dominic and Vivian will be hung out to dry in public. No, Ilara said. They'll hang themselves. I'm just shining the light. Isabel sighed. Ilara, I have to ask, are you ready to risk it? When this blows up, Dominic will drag you down too. They'll call you the betraying wife, the company wrecker. Ilara looked out the window, where the afternoon sun turned golden. I don't need them to love me. I just need them to see the truth. Silence. Only the hum of the air conditioner. Malcolm nodded finally. All right. We'll start by sending this package to the SEC. And Ilara, brace yourself. Once this bomb goes off, there's no turning back. That night, Ilara sat alone in her apartment. On the table was an external hard drive, the key holding all her collected data. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the rooftops. Her phone lit up. Another text from an anonymous D. You're foolish to think you can win. We make the rules. You're just a pawn. Ilara read slowly, each word like a knife. Then she set the phone down, smiling faintly. No, Dominic. I'm not a pawn. I'm rewriting the board. She opened her laptop, logging into the company's security system. The screen displayed dozens of unpublished files. One blinked. V.P. Confidential. PDF. She opened it. Inside were internal memos, emails between Vivian and Serena. The final line made her heart race. If Ilara finds out, activate clean slate protocol. She'll have nothing left to hold on to. Her hand clenched. Not just Dominic. Vivian and Serena were complicit too. But something in the text made her pause. A small detail, the first transaction code wasn't from Dominic but from Serena's account, 2 months before their affair began. Ilara, you okay? Isabel asked over the phone. Fine, she replied, eyes still on the screen. And I think I just found a way to make them destroy each other. 2 days later, Dominic held a press conference at the Waldorf Hotel. Behind him, Blackwell Ventures' logo gleamed, Serena at his side, her face cold, composed. He spoke, voice confident. Recent allegations against me and the company are baseless. It's unfortunate that certain individuals, for personal gain, have fabricated stories. I trust justice will restore my honor. But as he spoke, notifications flooded reporters' phones. Screens lit up, internal emails between Dominic, Serena, and Vivian leaked online. Every number, every signature exposed. Ilara sat in her office, watching the news spread like a tidal wave. She said nothing, only her eyes burned like the city lights below. On the other side of the screen, Dominic froze, his face stiff. Reporters shouted, "Mr. Dominic, are these documents real?" Chaos erupted. Serena ducked, slipping off the stage, her eyes meeting the camera, a flash of fear, a hint of betrayal. Ilara closed her laptop, leaning back in her chair. The storm had officially begun, and this time, she stood at its center, unshaken. Chicago didn't sleep that night. LED screens at Times Tower blazed with the same headline. Blackwell Empire falls, money laundering, betrayal, the fatal slap. The news spread like wildfire. Files Ilara had discreetly sent to the SEC, and the press went public at exactly 8 p.m. Every number, every email, every signature was a bullet piercing the polished facade. Dominic and his mother, Vivian Crosswell, had built over 2 decades. In Blackwell Ventures' office, Dominic slammed his fist on the desk, the sound like thunder. Impossible! Who leaked this? Serena stood in the corner, face ashen. Her eyes wavered, no longer proud, only afraid. Dominic threw a stack of papers against the wall, sheets scattering like a snowstorm. "You did this, didn't you? You betrayed me." Serena trembled, trying to speak. "No, it wasn't me, Dominic. Her Ilara, she had everything." He roared. "Shut up. If you hadn't opened your mouth to her, how could she know every detail so precisely?" Serena backed away, tears spilling. "You used me as a tool, but I didn't think she'd fight like this. She's not the wife you controlled anymore." Dominic gave a hollow laugh. "Who is she? A weak pregnant woman thinking she's a hero." Just then, the door swung open. 2 SEC agents entered, followed by federal police. "Mr. Dominic Alexander Blackwell," an agent said, voice cold. "You're under arrest for financial fraud and international money laundering." Dominic's face froze. He turned to Serena, then to the glass behind him where red and blue police lights flashed vividly. As cold handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he looked down, a tired, bitter smile forming. "You win, Ilara." At the same moment, across the city, Vivian Crosswell sat in her lavish penthouse, hands shaking as the TV blared the news. The room, once a symbol of power, now felt like a glass cage where every lie was exposed. "No, it can't be," she whispered, eyes welling. Ilara's photo appeared on a Forbes cover, with bold text. The silent CEO who spoke up. Vivian's head sank to the table. No one knocked, no one came to save her. The years of manipulation, the strings she'd pulled, now wrapped around her own neck. Meanwhile, Ilara stood by her apartment window in Lincoln Park, hand resting lightly on her belly, watching snow fall outside. A text from Isabel appeared. "Dominic's arrested. Serena's talking. SEC's confirmed all evidence. We won." Ilara didn't reply. She only closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. Victory, the word rang in her mind like a church bell. Deep, resonant, yet quiet. No thrill of triumph, only release. Malcolm called. "Ilara, you did it. Blackwell Holdings will be restructured. Do you want to stay on as CEO?" She smiled. "No, I've run enough. Now I just want to live." On the day of the sentencing, Ilara didn't attend. She watched on TV. Dominic, in a gray suit, looked gaunt, his eyes empty. As the judge read the verdict, he didn't look at anyone. Only once did he glance up, as if sensing her gaze through the lens. No anger, no hatred. Ilara whispered, like a quiet farewell. "I forgive you, but I won't forget." A month later, Chicago shifted into spring. The breeze carried the scent of magnolias, sweeping through the park where Alara often walked. She'd given birth to a daughter, Aurora Grace Whitfield. The baby's deep brown eyes shone like a starry night, and each time Alara looked into them, she saw herself, not the woman slapped, not the one hurt, but a source of light. Her small apartment now brimmed with laughter. Isabel visited, bringing a bouquet of tulips. "You're becoming a legend, Alara," she teased. "Women everywhere are messaging to thank you." Alara smiled softly, rocking Aurora to sleep. "If they're thanking me, tell them. I was just someone who stayed silent too long." Sunlight streamed through the window, bathing mother and daughter in a soft golden glow. On a nearby desk, a file lay open. Women Reborn Foundation Support for Survivors of Abuse. Alara had signed its founding papers. She didn't want her story to end in tears, but to spark beginnings for others. She stepped onto the balcony, breathing deeply, watching the city awaken. Chicago, still loud, still fierce, no longer scared her. She'd walked through the storm, and now she was the storm. In that moment, Alara closed her eyes, hearing Aurora's heartbeat blend with the wind. A low note, then bright. One chapter closed, another began. Across the street, a young reporter scribbled notes for tomorrow's article. She wrote the final line. "When power is used to control, it's a shackle. But when used to speak truth, it's freedom." And Alara Whitfield proved sometimes silence can shatter an empire. Dawn spilled over Chicago's skyline, light threading through towering buildings, reflecting on the river like scattered shards of a broken mirror. The city woke to the sound of car horns, wind weaving through narrow alleys, and within all those sounds a calm, steady pulse, the heartbeat of a new life. Alara stood by the window, gently holding Aurora. The baby reached out, tiny fingers brushing the air, as if grasping for light. "See that, my love?" Alara whispered, her voice soft as silk. "Light always returns, no matter how long the night." The small apartment brimmed with life. On the table sat bouquets sent from across the country. Women from New York, teachers from Texas, single mothers, survivors who'd never dared share their stories. Each card held gratitude. "Thank you, Alara. You gave us reason to believe silence isn't surrender." Alara read each one, her heart swelling with an indescribable feeling. She was no longer the betrayed wife, no longer the shadow behind Dominic Blackwell. She'd become a symbol not of power, but of courage. She recalled the final night before the trial, watching Dominic led away in handcuffs, flashes illuminating his weary face. She felt no joy, no satisfaction, only clarity. Sometimes, people must lose everything to see the value of what they destroyed. Aurora stirred in her arms, her eyes wide, gazing at the spreading sunlight. "You know," Alara said softly, "sometimes, a slap can kill a soul, but if the one struck chooses to rise, it can spark a revolution." The doorbell rang. Isabel walked in, holding a stack of papers. "You've got an invitation from the United Nations," she said, smiling brightly. "They want you to speak at the Global Women's Rights Conference. The theme is the power of silence." Alara laughed softly, a sound light yet deep, like wind brushing a harp. "Ironic, isn't it? I spent my life trying to speak, and now they want to hear about silence." Isabel smiled. "No, they want to hear how you turned silence into a voice." A week later, Alara stood in a vast hall in Geneva. Soft light fell on her shoulders, the audience hushed. Faces from around the world, women who'd been hidden, endured, feared, watched her. Alara began. "There was a time I believed if I stayed silent long enough, the storm would pass. I was wrong. The storm doesn't pass, it grows. And only when I stood up, faced it, did I understand. My silence had fed that storm." Her voice was low, rich, like a river flowing through memory. "No one is born strong. Strength comes when you have no choice but to stand. And sometimes, a woman stands, not just for herself, but for the generations after, for the children who haven't yet learned what fear is." Her eyes drifted to the front row, where Isabel sat, smiling proudly. Alara paused, then continued. "Dominic slapped me. But that slap didn't break me. It woke me. And when a woman wakes, the world must change." Applause rose, not loud but profound, spreading like a wave. Alara bowed, her eyes glistening not from pain, but from knowing she'd turned wounds into light. Back in Chicago, her life with Aurora was simple as breath. No longer a CEO, no longer on stages, no longer under flashes. Instead, she wrote pages about a silent woman who dared face the dark. The book, The Sound of Her Silence, became America's most read memoir within 2 weeks. In the dedication, Alara wrote, "I don't tell this story for pity. I tell it to remind you, when the world tells you to stay silent, that's when you must hear your heart's voice." One autumn evening, Alara sat in a rocking chair, Aurora asleep in her arms. Outside, the sunset painted the sky red, like a fiery tapestry closing the day. She sang softly, her voice a whisper. "Sleep, my little Dawn. Tomorrow, when you wake, you'll see how hard your mom fought for you." On a nearby desk, an old ultrasound image sat beside a new photo of mother and daughter, two faces past and present linked by an invisible thread of faith and love. Her phone buzzed. A text from Isabel. "Alara, they want to turn your story into a movie. You in?" Alara looked at the sky, smiling faintly. "If it helps even one woman find her voice, make it." As night fell, the city's lights glowed, reflecting on the shimmering river. Alara sat quietly, listening to Aurora's heartbeat blend with her own. In that moment, she understood freedom didn't come from revenge, but from letting go. She'd walked through the storm and became the light she'd once sought. The sunset bathed Chicago's windows in gold. In the small apartment, Alara held Aurora, rocking gently to the rhythm of her tiny heartbeat. Outside, a spring breeze brushed the curtains, carrying the scent of jasmine, the scent of the day she left her past behind. Alara looked at her daughter, smiling. In Aurora's brown eyes, she saw a sky peaceful, pure, boundless. She whispered, "I was once afraid of the dark, but it taught me how to find the light." The rocking chair creaked softly, the clock ticking in sync with their gentle breaths. No more flashes, no more noise, just peace and faith. Alara's story didn't end with applause, but with the serene silence of a woman who'd found herself. She was no longer the silent one, but proof that silence, when wielded right, could echo louder than any words. If this journey's strength resonates with you, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Because who knows, the next healing journey might be yours.